We're continuing to look at the artist Alphonse Mucha and looking specifically at Art Nouveau lettering. Art Nouveau lettering often uses a lot of flowing lines, curved shapes, and quite often refers to things in nature. So it might have vines kind of growing around the lettering and that kind of things. Here I'm onto the letter Q. So I started off doing the Q quite large, and then I tweaked it quite a few times with a pencil. So make sure that you press on really lightly till you get the shape that you want. You're going to need to write your letter and then adjust it several times. In the background of my Q, I'm starting to put some floral shapes to continue on with the Art Nouveau theme of using themes from nature. I'm using a fine tip 0.05 pen to go around the lines. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix myself a bit of a muted colour palette. Muted colours are colours where it's been slightly dulled down, so that means you can either add a little bit of brown or you can add a little bit of black, depending on how dark you want the colour to be. But the colours shouldn't be really bright reds, really bright greens. They should be slightly dulled down colours, such as these colours here. You can see a good selection there. So this time I'm going to be sticking to a brown and yellow colour palette, very similar to the ones that Nouveau uses in his work. I'm going to add a few touches of red later, because you don't want it to be too flat, but just a little bit of a colour pop later. So now I'm on to the letter R. So for the letter R, I've decided to go for a kind of blue type theme with this. So started off, once again, I did my letter. I filled it out a little bit. You do have to press on very lightly and then adjust your letter accordingly. I've used a compass to draw a kind of arc, and inside the arc I've put circular shapes, flowing lines around it, and circles inside. I've made a muted blue, adding a little bit of brown to the existing blue in the palette, and I've also made a muted green, slightly brighter green just in little touches, and then a darker muted blue around that. Later I'm going to go around this with a pen. This is a very fine 0.05 pen again, just adding a few little details. Lastly, I'm doing this last because that way, because I'm working on a very small scale, that way if any paints run it will just edge off and you won't actually see where any paints run. So my next letter is S. The letter S is perfect for Art Nouveau because it often uses a lot of flowing lines in Art Nouveau. So moving on to the S. Step number one is always to mask off the edges with masking tape. Do this very neatly. Take your time when you're using the masking tape. Don't rush it. I don't want to see you putting masking tape on the outside of your book and making it so that you can't open your book again. Take your time on that. So I've done my S. I've done a nice kind of curly S, very Art Nouveau. I've got a muted green, two muted greens in fact, one slightly brighter than the other because it's a slightly warmer green. And then I've got a cooler green just in little details. And I've gone a little darker on the edges. I'm going to use a sponge to make it slightly more darker on the edges. You see a little bit got ripped off by the masking tape, but not to worry, just fill that back in. and then I'm just adding those final details once again using a pen.